spend a moment here sort of introducing myself to those of you that don't know me. For 3 years, I represented the area of Aurora and Elgin and then out to the Mississippi River, the old Illinois 14th Congressional District. And during that time, it was some of the most consequential developments in our country's history. And you know, there's something, when you're a member of the U.S. Congress, there's something they give you. This is the voting card in the United States House. It's got a microchip inside it that identifies the bearer as the representative of your area of Illinois. And so you take this card and you walk across Independence Avenue and up on the floor into the U.S. Capitol and into the floor of the House of Representatives, and they have boxes of electronics scattered around the floor. And you take this card and you put it into the box and you push the red button or the green button and the world changes a little bit. And so I'm running against Congresswoman Judy Biggert, someone who's been in office for 14 years, someone who's been in politics for 30 years. And she and I were in office together. And we went and we voted during the 3 years that I represented Illinois in the United States House. And we voted very differently on important things. So when this card voted for Obamacare, to make sure that 40,000 people in this country will no longer die for lack of health insurance, I voted yes. Congresswoman Biggert voted no. When we voted for children's health insurance, I voted yes. Congresswoman Biggert voted no. For those of you that care about the rights of women and their fair treatment in the workplace, when the Lilly Ledbetter Act came up, that was very, very important to women's ability to get fair pay, equal pay for equal work. I voted yes. Congresswoman Biggert voted no. But there was no vote for me that was prouder than the vote that this card made for the DREAM Act.
Thank you very much.
Congresswoman Biggert voted no.
Thank you for that, Mr. Foster. As you know, there are over 12 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. And these are people in our communities that are living in the shadows. These are students that want to continue to go to higher education and want to contribute to their local economy. There are hardworking adults that want to work hard and raise their families as well. Will you support comprehensive immigration reform to help create a pathway to citizenship for these 12 million people that later will be voters? And we know that you have voted for the DREAM Act in the past, and this means a lot. Thank you. This means so much to our community to ensure that we win it the next time it's proposed. Will you vote for the federal DREAM Act again, and can we count on you at a federal level to protect our immigrant communities?
The answer is yes and yes. Immigration reform is an important one, and for all of the time that I've been in politics, it has been something I've supported very strongly. You know, it is a complex issue. When the comprehensive immigration reform is passed, it will be a big fat piece of legislation with hundreds of pages, because there are many, many important details that have to be negotiated. And I will not always be on your side for every one of those details, but I intend to be someone in the middle who is getting pot shots from both sides, hammering out a compromise that makes sure that this is not an issue that continues rotting in the American public and the American public life. You know, I view it as one of the great tragedies of the gridlock in Washington, D.C., that the McCain-Kennedy Comprehensive Immigration Reform Bill that was supported by the Bush administration and initially supported by Republicans as well as Democrats, that compromise was blown up by the right wing of the Republican Party, including Congresswoman Biggert and everyone who signed on to these enforcement only, build the fence first type proposals that made compromise impossible. I think that compromise is necessary for our government to work well, And then this will be an area where you'll need compromise. I'm a big fan of going and working hard in Congress, getting the problem half solved, and then coming back next section of Congress and getting it 3/4 solved, and 7/8 solved, and eventually until it's so close to a solution that people's lives can go on in the way they want. And it's, you know, it's an issue that's been very important to me personally and to my political campaign. You know, I guess among many people in Illinois, I guess I'm most famous for simply not being Jim Oberweis.
Oh, thank you. And as a follow-up to that, as you probably are aware that Joliet is currently considered a site to build a private for-profit immigration detention center. This would be very detrimental to our community. Will you help prevent Joliet from building this for-profit prison, immigration prison?
Yeah, well, I have this funny principle that, you know, I like to actually see something before I make a decision on it. You know, some ideas, look, I'll just tell you the principles on which I make the decision. This, you know, obviously something that brings jobs into the community is good and necessary. And, you know, and if they're the right kind of jobs with good pay and good benefits, that's a strong positive thing. It's my understanding that this is a for-profit enterprise. And for-profit incarceration is something that I am personally quite leery of. I would look very, very hard at the track record of whatever corporation was actually coming in and proposing this, and make sure that they had, at a minimum, a very good track record for treating the people being incarcerated well, because that's not universally true for for-profit enterprises. So the answer is, you know, I'm waiting and seeing. I want to see the details of it. But one of my biggest fears in it is that, you know, we have an immigration system that depends way too heavily on incarceration and deportation, and not enough on the rule of law and systems that people can depend on to plan their lives. And so that, you know, one of my fears is that, okay, you go and set up this big incarceration system, and then if, cross your fingers, we actually get comprehensive immigration reform, you know, it would no longer be necessary and those jobs would just disappear. So we have to, you know, think ahead a little bit, and we have to look at this very, very carefully.
Absolutely, thank you. And I'm going to switch to you. As you probably are or may not be aware, but the high school dropout rate among the Latino population is one of the highest in the country. And we see the same trend here in Will County, in all of the 7 cities that compose Will County. In your opinion, other than the parents, which ultimately are responsible, but who is also responsible, and what steps are needed to reduce these numbers in large cities that now make up the 11th Congressional District?
Yeah, this is something that, you know, it has been a struggle for generations. It has been a struggle in Aurora and Joliet and many other places. In my own district out in Sterling Rock Falls, there was a substantial Hispanic population with the exact same problems. And you know, as you mentioned, you know, part of it is the culture of the parents has to insist that children work hard and stay in school. I mean, that is a necessary part of it, but that is not, you know, it's a shared responsibility. We have to make sure that we have the best trained and the best qualified teachers. We have to make sure that they get the resources that they need to succeed. You know, one of the things that bothers me the most about when we talk about education, there's a large class of people in Congress, frankly, including my opponent Judy Biggert, who says again and again how much they love education. But when it comes time to actually provide proper funding for education, somehow they vote no. And so when the No Child Left Behind, the Bush proposals for No Child Left Behind came forward, Congresswoman Biggert voted for No Child Left Behind, but against the funding that made it possible to meet the goals for student performance. And this sort of hypocrisy is not a path to success in education.
Thank you. Absolutely right. Our elected officials promised us good jobs. What we have received in Will and DuPage counties instead are tens of thousands of temp to perm jobs with warehouses that are dotting our landscape. And these are jobs without benefits in conditions that are very hazardous unscrupulous employer practices that are stealing wages, they discriminate their employees by race, and create environments of sexual harassment and even outright abuse. And what will you do to respond to the plight of our 30,000 warehouse workers? What will you do to bring good jobs that pay an actual living wage to Will and DuPage counties?
Well, you touch on about five very important issues. I had already mentioned the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, which is an important point of difference. I will stand up for the rights of women against corporate interests. And there couldn't be a clearer test than that, than the vote for or against the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. I was proud to vote for it, and Congresswoman Biggert unfortunately voted against it. And but on the issues of abuse of females, I would have zero tolerance. This is something that just should not happen in our country ever. And some of that abuse happens because of the immigration status of some of those being abused, that they don't feel that they're in a position to raise the issues with the authorities. And that is a problem that goes away when we get comprehensive immigration reform. And that's one of the strongest reasons why I'm going to be working on it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time, Candidate Foster. Thank you so much for being here.